Hi, welcome to Hooked on Gingerbread. Tonight we're going to be creating the bricks for our apartment building, as well as I'm going to demonstrate how to make construction grade gingerbread out of corn syrup, the corn syrup recipe that we use. It's really different from the honey-based recipe I showed you last week. Before we get into that, I want to go over some of the ways that I've made bricks in the past. So if you don't like the way I'm making the bricks tonight and you want a different way, here you go. So the first way is with an impression mat. Now you can get these on Amazon, no big deal. I used this for a cookie class that I took with Julia Usher, and it made a little brick walkway, and then we put the moss around the bricks, and it worked really well. It was really pretty. The problem I have with this is that the recipe we used was a very soft molasses-based gingerbread. It wasn't construction grade gingerbread at all. In fact, it was a cookie recipe, so you actually could eat it. You don't want to have a soft recipe for your gingerbread. This I'm worried about it keeping the impression. If you were to use this on a construction grade gingerbread, I'm not sure if it would actually keep its shape. So I've also used a roller for bricks before. It creates a very nice, it's a brick, it's deep enough. The thing I don't like about it is you have to keep them very straight and you have to keep even pressure on them. And it's really difficult to do with such large pieces. But also the bricks are too small for this project. So I did use the roller for my Nationals project last year, as well as my Franklin, Tennessee Gingerbread House Spectacular project last year, and they turned out really well. So if you want to use a roller, go right ahead. Another way I've used bricks is I actually bought them. So I used Pez candy, P-E-Z, turned out really great. They're perfect. They're the perfect size. They're great for stacking. I just love them. Problem is, first of all, the cost. You have to buy, the least amount I bought was 7 pounds. The most I've ever bought was 12. But that the cost is one thing, but another thing is the color. You can't really, the color's not right. It's not really brick color, right? So you end up with either pink and orange house, or one time I had yellow because I got European Pez. I don't even know where I got that now that I think about it. So I moved away from Pez and then I went to my gum paste phase. And what I did was I took a pastry cutter, which we're using tonight, and a ruler. And I literally cut the gum paste. First I colored the gum paste to the color I wanted it. I cut it out. I cut it with the pastry cutter, and then I cut out the bricks the size I wanted them. And then I dried them, and they turn out great. Problem with the fondant is that most of the contests that I'm in now, they want to see gingerbread. They don't want to see gingerbread that's covered up with anything like fondant or gum paste or anything like that. Once I started using gingerbread for bricks, I began to actually love it. Because it starts off like this. This is a honey-based recipe that's been colored with red, and it looks really red, right? You don't really see brick this red. That's okay, because when you get it in the oven, you can get all these different colors depending on how long you keep it in the oven. So 15 minutes in the oven, this gingerbread turns into a nice brick color. You do it 16 to 17 minutes in the oven, it's a little darker. And then 20 minutes, it's dark. And then if you do it for longer than that, you're going to get some really dark bricks. But what I like about it is it's kind of the same shade. it looks natural. Whereas if I would have done this in gum paste, you know, I tried to make the different colors in gum paste, it wouldn't look as natural. So that's why I do like gingerbread, even though it's a bummer to cut out. Now that we've decided, well, I've decided, I'm going to use gingerbread. What kind of gingerbread do you use? Do you use the honey based or do you use a corn syrup based? Or the molasses based? Well, let's go with molasses first. Molasses is dark and it's great to cut. It's awesome to cut. But I'm really concerned, since we were making a really light brick tonight, like a cream color, that I'm really concerned about getting that color, pulling it off with a molasses-based recipe. So that's out. So now let's compare the corn syrup versus the honey-based recipe. All right, both are easy to color. All right, you just have to color it while it's still in a liquid form, so before you put the flour in. The corn syrup recipe will give you smoother bricks. The honey-based recipe will give you a more rustic looking brick. It'll have like sugar, some sugar crystals on it sometimes, but it still looks very rustic. It's really great for roads, or, you know, like brick roads or cobblestones even. But if you sand down these bricks, they'll look pretty much as smooth as the corn syrup ones. But the corn syrup recipe is it's difficult to cut, and it's very difficult to recycle the gingerbread. What I mean by recycling the gingerbread is that once you cut things out and you have like little extra gingerbread, you can't just wad it up and roll it out and reuse it. You have to heat it up again. The honey-based recipe is easy to cut, but it's tougher to roll out if you want a thinner brick. Now, if you want a thicker brick, it's no big deal. So it just depends. So with all of that said, we're going to be using the corn syrup recipe tonight. If you want to use the honey-based recipe, I demonstrate that recipe in my previous video, or you can find the recipe on hookedongingerbread.com. So let's get started. Here are the ingredients you're going to need. 6 3/4 cups of flour, 2 teaspoons of ground ginger, a half teaspoon of salt, 1 1/2 cups of corn syrup, light corn syrup, 1 cup of margarine, and 1 1/2 cups of brown sugar. Okay, so the first thing we want to do is get all of our flour in our mixing bowl, and this is 6 3/4 cups. Then we're going to put in our ginger and our salt, and then we're going to kind of give it a good mix there. With we're going to use a paddle attachment. Bring it up, and let's get our hot ingredients going. Okay, for our hot ingredients, we're going to melt 2 sticks of margarine, or a cup of margarine, and 1 1/2 cups of corn syrup. Let's see here. And then we're going to wait for this to melt down before we add our brown sugar. Okay, now that it's melted, I'm going to put in my brown sugar and let it melt in this goo. Once the brown sugar has dissolved, this would be the time you would put it into your flour. But before I do that, I'm going to color it with titanium dioxide. That sounds really bad, but it's actually It is a food, let's see, here it goes. It is a food grade titanium dioxide. And what this does is it will, I want this to create a lighter gingerbread for me. Now I would have used a light brown sugar, but I found out that my light brown sugar kind of bit the big one. I'm just guessing about how much titanium dioxide I'm going to need. I'm going to try to, I'm going to start with 2 tablespoons and see where that gets me. Roughly 2 tablespoons. It's not perfect in any way. I didn't take this off the burner completely is because I want it to be still warm when it hits the flour. So now it's getting a little lighter. And you know, I'm thinking about it now. I might just put a couple tablespoons of the titanium dioxide in the flour mixture itself. Okay, so I'm going to, just to be sure, I'm going to add a couple tablespoons of titanium dioxide into my flour mixture as well. So that gets us 4 tablespoons of titanium dioxide in the whole thing. Get it up. This is going to go really fast. You have to work fast with this because once it kind of cools, it's over with. And I see that's kind of gritty bottom. I don't know if I like boiling titanium dioxide now that. Okay, let's see what color we get here. Be very careful not to splash it because it is hot. You only want to mix it until it's just combined. So I get this really odd colored dough. See what we got here. It's an odd colored dough, and I'm wondering if I should I'm going to try putting white food coloring in it. It's still kind of really loose, kind of bugs me a bit. I'm putting white food coloring in it as well. It's a little liquid, but anything to help boost it a bit. Okay, so you want to make sure you work fast. So you want to have your foil or your mats, whatever you use, out. Be very careful. This is hot. I mean, it's hot. It's very, well, incredibly not even on the warm side. It's so you have to be really, really careful not to burn yourself. My hands are so used to this, so I don't need gloves, but if you need gloves, please, please, please use them. It's not worth getting burned over. Now I flatten it out as fast as I can. My bricks are going to be the same width or depth as my walls, so I'm making them 1/8 of an inch. And so roll it out, like I said, as fast as you possibly can. Let's see here. It's kind of white. It's really like an off-white. But it's... Okay, so you're just trying to get it all on your mat at an even, definitely an even thickness. No matter what thickness you use, you don't have to use the thickness I'm using, which is, like I said, 1/8 of an inch. You can go thicker. I wouldn't go thinner. This is pretty thin. I just have a lot to cover. but it does have to be even, because if not, you're gonna have problems with your bricks. This, as you can tell, this is much easier to roll at first than the honey recipe, but it's still, you know, once it sets, once it cools, that's it. You know? It doesn't want to do any. It's really a bummer. Okay, and once I get done with one, I go to the next one. I don't worry about cutting them out at this point. Okay, now that we have all of the gingerbread rolled out, I have maybe four or five mats of this. I can start cutting. Now what I have are 1/4 of an inch spacers in between here. And they just, if you've never used one, they lock in like so. If I can get it out, they just lock in, and then you just, so you can, this is actually a Wilton one. There are metal ones out there that probably do a better job. I spray it with Pam because when you have cuts this thin, they tend to curl up into the gingerbread tends to curl up in here. So I spray them a little bit to see if that helps. I don't know if it does or not, but we're gonna try it anyway. So what I do is I just start bringing down. See how it kind of catches? So you want to kind of hold it once you get it started, and you bring it down. And I'm pressing pretty firmly just because it has cooled and it's not that easy to cut once it's cooled. That's why I think that maybe a metal pastry cutter would be better. I'm not really sure, but I'm thinking about ordering one. So then I take a knife and I just cut the extra off. This gingerbread is not really great recycled. So when I take this piece off, you can get a bunch of extra pieces together and put them in the oven for like 2 minutes maybe at 300, or maybe less than that. I try to do the least amount as possible time in the oven, so it softens up again and you can re-roll it. When I have re-rolled it, about half of the bricks come out with bubbles in them and you really can't use them. So what I do instead with this recipe is I can make ginger clay out of this, especially when it's this light. This is great ginger clay. But so I'm going to take my extra pieces and put them aside. So I cut into that, darn it. You don't want to cut into it. I do a couple rows like this, just bringing them down. I exaggerate the space in between the two rows that I'm doing just so I know what is what's a real true brick and what's not. Because if this was any thinner, I'd have to count the rows, and I didn't want to do that. So and then this is scrap, and so on. And I like to, if I see something that is not really, if it's not really defined, I'll cut it. Let's just do one more. You want to be as straight as possible as well. I'm really pushing hard on this. And when I do push hard, you see I'm getting some wiggles in here, and you really don't want that. So when you can take your knife and kind of straighten them out, like so. I just kind of straighten them out just a little bit. Okay, so I've got 3 lines here. What I try to do is pick them up and straighten them out. But if they're too if they're stuck on your mat, you don't have to do that. But I just like to get them as straight as possible. Whoops. you don't want them separated. That's why I rarely mess with the in-between ones, although on this one I did, darn it. There we go. Oops. That's why you don't want to mess with the in-between lines. You just want to mess with the end lines. This one's not going to be good over here. Let me fix this here. So you want to make sure that they're as straight as you can get them. Now what I do is I take a large knife and I make it as straight as possible on both sides. And what I do when I have a large amount of bricks, I will put down painter's tape and I will mark off where I want the size of the bricks, where I want them to go. But I ran out of painter's tape and it's coming in the mail. It's coming. But for now, I want my my rulers kind of messed up on this side, so I always start on the 1 inch mark. I want my bricks to be 5/8 of an inch. Now you may want bricks smaller than that, whatever you want to do, but that's pretty much where I feel comfortable. So what I do is I put it on the 5/8 of an inch mark. I make sure that it's straight all the way up and down, and then cut. And again, I bring it to the 2, and then bring it to the 5/8 mark, and cut. So once I'm done with that, I take the bricks, I don't know if you can see this, and I put them on another sheet where I separate them out. This is a sheet that they're going to go into the oven, that I'm going to put in the oven. So, oops, it's not all the way cut. Make sure you get them all the way. When I use a ruler, I usually mess up because I hit the ruler when I come down on it. But here we go. So I'm going to take slide all these boogers off. Man, I really messed that up, didn't I? Now it's really, the reason why I do this is really, really, really important for you to have the bricks facing up. There's a definite, they're sort of rounded more on the top. When I cut them, when I cut them out on this mat and transfer them over to another mat, some of them fall over. They get on the wrong side, and then I get this weird pattern on. I get a weird pattern on them, or they don't bake right. So I try to keep them top side up. Let me get all these little edges here. Okay. So now you don't want to leave them like this, because sometimes it's okay, but sometimes they will bake together and you can't get them out. So you might as well just cut them to begin with. And it's not a lot of cutting. It's just, you're just kind of separating them out, making sure that they're not going to bake together. Okay, so once you have all these cut, you're going to want to put them in the oven. I start off at 15 minutes. Now when they're this light, I'm really going to watch them, because I'm not sure about the color I want them to be yet. So it's really important to use that oven thermometer and to really pay close attention to the time you have them in the oven. Because if you want a consistent color or just a little bit off, you want to be able to know how you got that color. It's also important for you not to bend the bricks. Some of them I did actually bend. You don't want to really move them around too much and bend them, because you want them to be as straight as possible. So let's put it in the oven. I'm going to check them. I'm going to check them at 10 minutes just in case. But I'm going to try to go for 15 and see how brown they get. Okay, I have some bricks done. Some of them, as you can see, are pretty light. I put them in the oven at 325 for 7 minutes. Believe it or not. The ones that are really dark or darker, I put in the oven for about 15 minutes. Anywho, what I want to show you what the final product looked like. I was messing around with this last night. I didn't want to start messing with it, not, I'll put it this way. I didn't want to mess with it and decided I didn't like the color. So you see you've got a whole range of different colors here. This is building 1, level 5. The reason why I didn't start at level 1, first of all, was because the front is not brick on level 1. It's like a wood type of siding, and that is going to be ginger clay, which we'll be discussing either next time or the time after that. So I wanted to start off at the top and work my way down. Now, with this, you have to, if you're going to brick like this, if you're not going to put, let me backtrack. I used to put all my buildings together first, the entire structure together first, and then brick it, because that's easier to do. This one has got so much detail on the outside, I didn't want to do that, so I'm trying something new. So for the top floor, it was pretty easy. I just started from the top and worked my way down, kind of the opposite of what you would think. So the first floor, well, the fifth floor, I should say, was pretty easy. All I had to do was make sure that the right side hooked up to the like this to the second floor. I may have to file some of these bricks back, but the rows had to match. On both edges, and I have to do the same for the other side I'm going to be showing you tonight. But that was all there is to it. Now for the fourth floor, I had to figure out something different. I had to say, okay, where do my bricks fall here at the bottom? And it just so happened it fell almost flush with the bottom, almost. So what I did was I'm taking my fifth floor, and I looked at my bricks, and I wanted to see how much space my fifth floor's edge is going to need for a brick. And so it looks like maybe it's almost a half a brick size. And then what I did was I took my fourth floor and I put it right up. I made sure they were both flush. Oops, it's upside down. Yeah, I gotta make sure you've got it right. So I took my fourth floor and I made sure that my ends were even, the gingerbread part, not the brick part, were even. And you notice these bricks are all the same as you go across there. Well, there's one missing from here, but they're even. You know, they're not staggered, and it's because, and there's like a little lip in here, and it's because when I put this together, it's going to accommodate for the fifth floor. So we're going to put the floor that we have the fourth floor, then we're going to put the fifth floor on top of the fourth floor, and then we're going to put this on top of that. And we needed room to make another row of bricks once we put the building up. Okay, so we're going to be bricking the fifth floor and the left side. First thing I did was I wanted to make sure that, you know, everything kind of lined up. If your piece is not flat, it curls a bit, you can put it back in the oven for about, at 325 for about, oh, I'd say around 3 to 4 minutes. And then take it out of the oven. What I do is I put a really hard cookie sheet on top of it, and then I put one of my husband's cast iron skillets on top of that to flatten it out. And I would let it sit there with the cast iron skillet and the cookie sheet on it for about about 5 minutes or so, until it's, or 10 minutes to be sure, so that it's cool and it's flat, because you really don't want to work on a curved surface. So after that, what I'm going to do is I'm going to line these up. I'm missing a piece here too. When the little end pieces fall off, I don't worry so much about that, because I can replace them. And you'll see like little pieces in here. I can replace that. I can replace the missing pieces here too, or I can just skip it because it's going to be covered up by molding anyway. So whatever floats your boat. So I'm going to make sure that this is completely even. So what I'm doing now is I am just making lines. These are just guidelines for me, so I know that I'm not veering off the path. So you're not like getting all crooked and stuff. And that's all crooked and stuff. Wow, that's really good, Susan. Wah, wah, wah. And this is an edible marker, by the way. Okay, I've made my guide marks to keep my bricks straight. You'll notice that this is kind of wonky right here. It's because it's not straight. I have to actually add to this, but it's such a small detail that I think I can fix that. But if you don't think you can fix yours, you're going to have to rebake it. So it's just like it's a little crooked. I'm going to get these guys straight. I'm making sure these both are even so that my rows will match both the front and the side. So here we go. I just grab a bunch. You can see I've got some. Now, let's see. All right. So if this piece was here, if it didn't fall out, it would be a sticky out one, which is a technical term. So what I need to do now is this one has to be, the first one in this row has to be a sticky outy one. So I'm going to make sure these are even. But we're going to put these on with just a little bit of royal icing. Now I just use reusable bags. This is too big of a hole, but I was using it for something else. So I'm trying to make it work because I don't want to make any more royal icing tonight. So if you, the royal icing I use is the kind with meringue powder. It's 4 cups of powdered sugar, 3 tablespoons of meringue powder, and at least 5 tablespoons of water. Sometimes I need 6, sometimes I need 7, depending on how dry the air is. So I'm only going to do a little bit of a line, and it's not very thick. You don't want the royal icing to be oozing out of here. All of these are really fat. Some of these really spread, and I don't know if it was because the titanium dioxide was in it, but they spread. So I kind of like thin them out a little bit on the edges when I need to. Okay, so this one is a sticky outy one, and it has to go halfway out. So I'm putting it halfway out. And then it's pretty much random. I kind of look at the different colors that I have, but for the most part it is random. If I get too many of one color, I just might change it up because you don't want too many in a row. And then I just make sure that they're going on straight, and then they have some sort of grout line in between them. This is totally by eyesight. It's nothing, and you may not want to do that. You might want to be more precise, but yeah, I'm just not that kind of gal. Now, all right, so before I go on, I'm going to wipe all this excess royal icing off. Never leave, if you're going to leave your project and come back to it later, you always need to make sure all the excess royal icing is off of it. If you don't, you're going to have a very hard mess on your hands. So now what I'm going to do, since I've got it started, I'm going to go to the second one. Just to here. Oops, that's a little too much. Yeah. And this one goes right directly to the edge of your gingerbread. In fact, this is kind of short. This one's too long, I think, and then this one's too short. Some of mine shrunk. Let me get another one. Is this long enough? You'll find that some of your, because some of your bricks are too short, and what you can do is just get another one. You can use some of the short ones. Just it's really conspicuous right here if you don't use a long one. Okay, so I have, because this one's too long, so I have this one going right to the edge, and now I can start bricking, although that's a shorty too. What did I do? Just pick all shorties? Here we go. Make sure they're straight. Oh, it's too wide. Drama, 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 drama. Although this isn't real drama here. Because this is just par for the course. It wouldn't have happened if I'd have been a little neater when I was making my bricks to begin with. Just saying. It isn't the gingerbread's fault, in other words. Some of these came out really fat. Now, if you find yourself getting too much royal icing in here, you can use a clay tool. This is kind of a pointy one to clean it up. I just sort of push down in here because you don't want to fill your grout lines yet. All right. So this is straight, this is straight. Actually, what I was doing the other night was taking my square and making it square, right? And then shoving it up and making sure that everything looked good. It's weird, but I'm like, hey, this kind of works. Okay. All right, I'm going to finish that first row. I just wanted to get the second row started for some weird reason. I just wanted to make sure that everything looked okay with this first with the first row by doing the second row, and it looks like it's going to go all right. So I did find another way of making bricks if you want to know while I'm doing this. I used to make doll houses, or I kind of made one doll house, but I also made a replica of Lincoln's home, and so I had to do brickwork with that. And what was really cool is you can buy these bricks on dollhouse bricks with a mesh backing to them. If you get that and then you mold it, I bet you that would come out. You could also mold. You could also make a bunch of clay squares and then put them on a, what do you call it? Put them and then bake them, and then put them on a poster board and glue them down and spray it with lacquer, so it kind of like I don't think you need to spray with lacquer, but just in case it sticks to the poster board you're molding, I'd spray it with lacquer, and then you can mold that too. So you can make a mold, or I wouldn't say mold, it would be an impression mat at that point. I'm thinking about doing that next time. This is getting old. Oh, so this is kind of still, I'm gonna just cut it off. I think I got too many long ones, or I don't know. I'm gonna cut this off so it's even with, no, it's a sticky outie, I forgot. Oh, I almost made a mistake. Jeez, too busy talking, not enough doing. That's what I'm saying. Okay, so we got another sticky outie thing. Hopefully it sticks out enough. I just took that long one out. Darn it. Alright, so I'm getting a whole bunch of yuck up here. You really don't want any excess royal icing anywhere. And if you notice, I am not crazy neat. I just wipe that royal icing anywhere I can. That's why I keep a mat down. Alright, so there's my first row. A sticky outie and a sticky outie one. Now this is one that comes to the edge, so we want this side to come to the edge too. Now when you come to a window, you can like cut it in half or whatever, or you can just leave it like this, and then I just let it dry and I go through with the Dremel and clean all that up. It's up to you, but when you come over on the other end, then you're going to want to just pick up where you left off. So I'm going to put mine here. It's okay to have a gap here because we're going to have I'm going to have molding there, and this is enough. This right here is enough to support the molding. I don't want a bigger gap than that because then the molding will sink. And then you just keep moving forward, except I put too much royal icing on here. Now when you're getting close to the bottom, take a look at where you're at with your bricks, your brick line. And you can make adjustments. Oh, I'm constantly looking, pulling this up and looking to see it does it look straight to me, that type of thing. But really, this is a time to really make sure. Like I said, this is going to be a little uneven because I know, that's why I put a little arrow here. I knew that it was going to be a little off, but I'm looking at the overall. Is anything moving in the right? Everything should be as parallel as possible. If it's not, this is the time to fix it, because once the royal icing is dry and you've sanded it and everything, it's really difficult to pull it up. In fact, you probably ruin half of your piece trying to correct the error. So it's better to correct the error now than later. Okay, so now we've got the left side done. Now we just need to wait for about 20 to 30 minutes. Let our royal icing set. If you're using a different royal icing than me, you may have to wait a longer amount of time. If it makes you feel better, you can wait overnight. The next step is sanding. So this is pretty much ready to sand. I'm trying to look at some of the the royal icing in here. I don't want to rush it or anything. If some of the edges come off, like it just did here, that's okay, because you can put it together. When you're putting it together, when you're actually building it, you can replace those bricks. The most important thing is the bricks right in here because that's where I'm going to be putting my molding, and that needs to be fixed before I put in the isomalt and all the trim work. But here on the edges here, it doesn't really matter. Right, so what we're going to do, I use 180 grit sandpaper. You don't want to use anything that's lower than 180. I've used 220 before. It takes a little bit longer to sand, but whatever you have. I try to use little pieces, not big pieces. Do not use a mouse. Do not use a belt sander. I have both of those, but I choose not to use it because I want to feel the bumps in. I want to feel the bumps in the bricks. I want to be able to feel it go level. If you use a mouse, you may take off too much, or a belt sander, you'll definitely take off too much because these aren't very thick bricks to begin with. So what I do is I just go, I kind of start off in one direction. And if you can see, this is bumpy. It's pretty bumpy. There's some that are higher than others. And all we're trying to do is get them all to be even. And I'm not pushing really hard. I might stay in one spot. This one's really high right here, so I'll stay on this spot until it goes down, and then I'll just move on. And that's all there is to it. Now I'm going to stay clear of the edges. The edges will get sanded when I put up the bricks, so you don't need to worry about that. Now it feels like it's pretty flat. So now what I do is I'll take a brush and get all the excess dust out of there. Try to take a look at it again. I'm not sure how this is going to go because some of these are pretty loose. But what I do now is I'll take my Dremel with a little sander attachment, and I'll go through and you'll smooth out the windows here. You have to do it very lightly because they could go flying. Like this is going to go flying. Hold on. Don't leave me. Yeah, sometimes begging the bricks not to leave helps, but most of the time it doesn't. This has a lot of real icing in it. I built it up a bit, and I'm not sure if I want to keep it. But see, now you've got all these rounded edges at the bottom, which you don't want. So I take my X-Acto blade very carefully, because I know these are loose, and I will flatten it out. I'll dig it. Well, there goes one. I'll just replace it. These are right on the edge. I lost it. This one's taller than this one. So, but if I cut these in half right now, they're all going to break apart. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to leave it the way it is. I'm going to work on the edges on this one. And cleaned up here. So the majority of my ginger dust is out. So, and it feels flat to me. So the worst thing in the world is you want is a not flat surface. Oh, I hate you. I'm going to start throwing a fit here in a minute. You're going to see a temper tantrum. Alright, I'm going to leave him here. I'll deal with him later. To grout this, what I first need to do is protect the gingerbread. because I have to use some semblance of water to get rid of the grout. Just a little dab of water, but I don't like to have any type of moisture hitting the gingerbread if I can help it. So what I use is this PME clear edible glaze spray. Ooh, it smells. It smells like vanilla, kind of, an aerosol vanilla. But yeah, so I spray this on, and don't worry, it doesn't leave it doesn't really leave a shiny finish. But so I let that dry for about 2 minutes, and it'll what it does is it protects the gingerbread, and plus it gives a slightly slick surface to your bricks, and that really helps when you're grouting, and you'll see why in a minute. Okay, I'm back. It looks like it's pretty dry. So now what I'm going to do is I'm going to put royal icing in the middle, in the grout lines. This is definitely too big a spout for this, but I've done this so long that I can work with it. I would just cut just a little tip off and try to get into the grout lines as evenly as you can, so you don't have to wipe off as much. But here I go. So what I'm doing is I'm just doing a little thin stream into the grout lines, and just kind of pushing it in there. And I only do like two rows at a time, because you don't want the royal icing to dry on you. If it dries on you, you've just ruined your piece. So what I do first is I just use my finger to wipe off the excess, and then I kind of bring it down to other bricks if there's a lot of it. There we go. And then I get a paper towel, and I mean, I get a little bit of water on it, and I just press it in. It's the consistency of like if you spit in this paper towel. It is, you can't wring it or anything. It's just a little tad damp. Not even, I don't even want to say crazy damp at all. You don't want to introduce a lot of water to your gingerbread. But what I'm doing is I'm just wiping the excess royal icing off. And of course, you know, that glaze is only going to protect so much because it is edible and water soluble. So you want to do this, the least amount of grout you can get on your bricks, the better. But you definitely want to make sure that it's smooth, and there's no like holes. You don't want to need tuck pointing is what I'm saying. So now I get to go to my next ones. Okay. Looks pretty good. Just go look over it. You make sure you look over it and make sure that all the grout has been wiped off the bricks and you're not missing any grout lines or anything like that. Okay. Once that's done, you just make sure this lies flat overnight and it dries. And then you just move on to your next piece. One more tip before we go. Make sure your royal icing is the consistency of toothpaste. You don't want it too runny. You don't want to introduce any more moisture to your gingerbread. You don't want it too thick because that won't work. Okay, well, nothing will stick. Okay? So I guess everyone can agree, I think everyone does agree, that my way of making bricks and laying them is kind of tedious. But you cannot get this kind of color, the variation of color, with anything else. A roller, an impression mat, whatever. You just don't get this kind of color, and I love it. It's really not that hard. It doesn't take a lot of time. All I have to say is try it. If you have a big building like the friend's apartment building, invite a friend over and definitely supply the booze and the pizza. The booze after the cutting is done. Next week, we're going to be doing isomalt and ginger clay. So until then,